Thought we got off to a good start. I think that was guys were really. We had talked about that a lot, and we had a week without playing. We just went through final exams, and that can go either way. Guys are so excited about that. They're probably staying up a little bit later than what they normally do, waking up a little bit closer to practice time, and so you're never sure how you come out of the gates, particularly in that first game after final exam. So I thought we did a really good job of getting the game started the way that we wanted to on both sides of the ball. At some point in the first half, and we had missed 5 what I would call layups. If you're inside the charge arc when you shoot it, I call it a layup. And so we missed 5 of those, including one that got blocked. But we missed 5 of those, so it kind of changed the tide a little bit. But I thought the guys did a good job in the second half defensively. We held them to, I think, 24 in the second half, and did some really good things. It was a lower possession game overall, so our points per possession probably will end up being halfway decent. But I thought there was a stretch in that second half defensively where I liked what we were doing.
Questions? David?
Lamont, you look at Hayden Brown's performance. I think he had those 7 points in 3 minutes, right, when you guys were down 1, to kind of give you the lead and stay there. Just what did you think of his first half, and then did you say anything before that second half stretch, or tell him to, hey, we need you here? Just how did that stretch go from your view?
Yeah, I mean he was being aggressive and active, and we need him to produce for us offensively. That's the second time I think in our first game of the season. Honestly, it was his first game back from having been injured, and it was a very similar situation. We were not playing great, down possibly even, and we went to him, bang, 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 3 possessions in a row around the basket, and he got something done. But I don't know. Some of it's he has a sense for that kind of thing. He's a wily veteran, so he's been around, and he doesn't get discouraged. Even if he doesn't play well, he doesn't get discouraged. And so I think he felt, he had a couple defensive lapses too. He was playing one-on-one in the post. He was outsized, but the guy went by him, used quickness. And so I think to some degree he felt like he owed us. He needed to get it back for his team. So he took advantage and seized the moment, and it was good once we got up. I think it inspired some guys and to continue to play well.
Lamont, you mentioned the defense. Just where are you? That's kind of been a sticking point for players talking about it. Where do you feel like you are in terms of installing it and guys being able to understand it and what they're doing in it?
Pretty good in terms of an overall understanding of what we want to get accomplished. I'd say we're there. On the vast majority of things, there'll be a couple other things as we grow that we may be able to add in there that we don't do yet. But I think it's less about understanding from a conceptual standpoint at this point versus committing to doing it consistently, right? Like, here sums it up in a nutshell. We had worked this week with Josh Gray on not leaving his feet when he's in an advantageous defensive position, being the second jumper, and just with his size, and guys are going to have a hard time scoring over him if he doesn't give him an angle. And right live, there's no teacher like the game, right? And right in the game, he did it, and the guy shoots it over the backboard. I don't know if you remember the play. Shoots it over the backboard, and I took the moment to go out on the court and give him a 5. So I think he's understood that concept for a while, but doing it is something different. And then doing it consistent is yet something different. And so I think we're doing some things. I think now the next thing will be, do we do them so consistently that when people think about us, that's what they think about? And we don't do that yet. But I think as far as understanding what we want to do defensively, principally, I think we're pretty close on the vast majority of the things that we want to get done.
Michael in front.
You just mentioned Josh Gray there. It's a second straight game where Ben got into foul trouble early. Just curious overall what sort of your take is on your big men and what you've seen so far this season in terms of production, and what did you see out of Gray today, coming out there playing off the bench?
It hasn't been consistent. It hasn't been one guy. If you remember the first 2 games of the year, Josh was a huge part of what we were doing in terms of just overall size, rebounding, got us some second chance opportunities, and maybe even scored in there a couple times. Benjamin had struggled in those games. Well, then in this game, Ben comes out and he makes his first 2 baskets. So, okay, it's going to be Ben's day. And then he picks up 2 fouls, and it seemed like about 2 possessions. And so we had to end up getting back to Josh. So we're still searching for some consistency, I think, out of that and predictability in terms of what guys are going to do and what they definitely are going to bring every single day. We played Josh in some other games, and maybe the matchups weren't great for him, but he's had super high energy a couple times. He's been, where's Josh? A couple times. And so just trying to get consistency out of those guys and predictability in terms of what we're going to be able to count on, especially on the defensive side of things for those guys. But it's why we play 32 games or whatever it is. You know, those guys don't have a hard time doing that on an everyday basis. But as long as one of them does it here, and as long as they ham and egg it, as you say on the golf course, right? You can't bogey when I bogey. You got a birdie when I bogey, and I got a birdie when you bogey if you want to have any type of score. So as long as they continue to ham and egg it, I'm okay with that. But, yeah, we're shooting for consistent performances.
Coach Paris, your last 2 wins came by you guys overcoming adversity. What sort are you learning so far about this team in the early going?
Yeah, the whole thing is a process, and I think just stick-to-itedness and not being easily discouraged. We talk about that. Don't be easily discouraged. There's a lot of reasons to be discouraged, and I think that carries over to life, honestly. You know, something happened. Okay, that wasn't what we were planning. Well, then what do you do after that? You have a couple options. One of them is to continue along that path, and so I think we're learning to do that. We're learning to do that. We're having some successes with some things, and which spawns belief in some of those things, especially in some tight games like this. And hopefully we can continue that, and then maybe you play in a way where there are not as many close games, but. If you can draw it up, you'd like every game to be close. I think lessons are taught better that way. You can learn lessons from winning and losing, and oftentimes we think it's just the losing. But these games like this are going to help continue to build character, belief, toughness. I think we had to get a couple rebounds in a crowd down there. You got to make some decisions. So I think it's really good for our guys to continue to get those experiences. But and the more that they do that, the more they're going to believe in themselves to perform as we get those. We get in a conference game, every game's going to be, most games are going to be tight. And so to have that history to fall back on just helps with your belief.
Hey, Lamont, we don't get a lot of Gamecock doubleheaders at the CLA that often. What did you think of the day of all Gamecock basketball and the vibes at the CLA today?
Yeah, I love it. I thought it was, it made my journey here. I questioned my decision to drive versus walk from the old Coliseum where my office is. But, it was it took about probably 3 times as long to get here today, but I thought it was awesome. I thought it was really good. There's just a different vibe too. We're coming into the building, and a couple of women's players are finishing up and leaving, and they've played well, and our guys are interacting with them. Our coaches are interacting with their coaches. I thought it was awesome. Some of the fans stayed from their game to our game. So I thought it was great. I like doing it. I don't have any problem with it. I thought we did a great job logistically of handling everything. And so I thought it was really good. Good for the fans, just an overall good vibe.
Michi had 16 tonight, 7 of 17 from the field. Where is he in terms of getting back to the Michi you guys saw in the preseason and what you kind of anticipated?
Much closer, obviously, than in those first few games. I'm not trying to alibi for the young man, but coming into the season up until that exhibition game, he was our most effective offensive guy. Gigi was really young still and figuring it out, and his growth has been extremely quick. I've said he's how good of a learner and quick of a learner he is. But so then Michi had the setback of getting hurt, and it just was physically and mentally. He told me this. He was as explosive as he's ever been in his life. And I don't even remember in the exhibition game, one of the first plays of the game, I think it was our first 2 points. He drives baseline and dunks on a guy the same way Hayden just did tonight, right? And he'd never done anything like that before. He said, I've never done that. I've never felt that good in my life physically. And then so for that to happen, and he's had a serious injury before. So, I think it messed with him a little bit, but he's much closer. I'm going to continue to encourage him to be aggressive. And he'll shoot 1 or 2 from the moon as I call it out there, and I try to tell him not to play to that. Use that as, if you have to, you have to. But he's getting there, and we need him to be good. I think when he's aggressive, good things happen. He's a good passer. He's unselfish. He sees things. He's really good at attacking on one side of the floor and seeing how you defend and what's open on the back side of the floor. There's a lot of good opportunities down there. Hayden's open three at the top of the key, I think, was a result of him driving in one direction, seeing the backside, and throwing it to a guy who was wide open. So we need him to be aggressive. We need him to play well, but we need him to be aggressive and be confident, get that swag back. It was dripping off of him, as the season started, and hopefully we look to get that back.
Coach, one of the tougher things for freshmen can be knowing when to be aggressive on offense and then maybe when to lay back and dish the ball back out and sort of live the fight for another possession. It seemed like today Gigi had a great game in that regard. What have you seen from him in terms of that aspect from game one all the way up till now?
Yeah. The maturity not to mention he leads us in points and rebounds. I haven't looked. I think it's still that, but he does. So that person who's also a freshman, who's also a 17-year-old freshman, gets the ball kicked ahead to him with whatever it was, 5 minutes left in the clock, and he understands that it's the kind of lead. It's that kind of lead where it's not so big you can do whatever you want, right? And it's not so small that I might as well take these 2 points if I can get these 2 points right now. It's that kind of lead where you got to it's gas or brake and figure out which ones. Those are the hardest ones for anybody to figure out. And so for him to make that decision and pull it out is, he's a different guy that way. He's different. He's advanced. He's really advanced as a thinker of the game, and his feel and natural instincts for the game are really advanced. And so it doesn't surprise me that much just having been around him on a regular basis. But yeah, I think I agree with you. He knows, he seems to have a good feel for the gas pedal and the brake most of the times. And I want him to have his foot hovering over the gas at all times. So.
We saw some of those kind of 3 guard lineups in the first half. Some of that was the foul trouble. But do you feel like you're getting close to trying to figure out maybe your best lineups or what you like best with this team with conference play approaching?
Sure, getting closer, but there's still some inconsistencies in what guys are doing on an everyday basis. And I didn't anticipate not playing Zach or Daniel today. It just ended up going that way. We had a stretch in that first half that we were cooking, and I wanted to ride that out as long as we could. And it's double figures lead, and if you can make 1 or 2 plays with that same group, you might go up 17 or 16, and then 1 or 2 buckets in the second half, and the team may fall apart, your opponent. But so we're definitely getting closer. We have the core group, but we're still figuring out, what's best for us in terms of how many minutes to play with the smaller lineup. How effective is Hayden Brown going to be when we have him out there in a situation where the 5-man will guard him? And so I think it could be really productive. What does that mean for us defensively? How good are our bigger guys defensively in guarding the post? Because if they're no better in guarding the post, well, then you might as well get the offensive benefits of playing small. And so that's been inconsistent. Today, Josh was really good at playing one-on-one in the post. We've had some other games where I felt like we needed to double the post with our biggest guys guarding the post. So until we have some real consistency in terms of performances, some of it will be push a button here, pull a string there until you get it all figured out. But we're definitely getting closer. It's our core group of guys need to play well and be really consistent. And then that next group of guys, extremely valuable, extremely important, those performances. Oftentimes the game hangs in the balances with what those guys do. And so we're still searching for some consistency in those roles.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, guys.